Hello lovely chicken nugget, welcome. Today I finally decided I'm going to take out my 8 months twist. I had this back in December before we entered Jumanji.
Welcome to Jumanji.
In the fall of 1982, a teenage girl named Charlotte Casey and her parents packed up their life in their home city and moved across the state in order to escape and protect themselves from the tragedies that had occurred in their former hometown. Back home, over the course of the year, several girls had disappeared from their homes as they slept. Some were found deceased, and some were never seen again. Police had minimal leads on finding the perpetrator, but often claimed they were getting closer to apprehending a key suspect. Charlotte's mother began to fear for her daughter's life to the point where she could no longer sleep through the night without waking up several times as a shaking, nervous wreck, concerned that the worst had occurred. She would then go and check on Charlotte, only to find her sleeping soundly, return to bed, only to repeat the process a few hours later. After seeing the toll this was taking on his wife, the father decided that the best course of action was to leave this town behind them and start anew. Charlotte did not want to leave her hometown, and least of all, she didn't want to leave her friends. But her father had made up his mind. They pulled into their new town around noon on a Sunday, and soon after, arrived at their new home. They all stood in the driveway. The mother looked up at the new house, hopeful that they would feel safer here, and that their lives would soon return to normal. The removal van was not far behind them, and as it pulled up, the parents gave Charlotte the key and asked her to let herself inside as they tended to the removalists. Charlotte opened the front door and was greeted with the smell of dust and nothingness as she stepped into the bare and echoey, empty hallway. She made her way upstairs and opened the door to what was to be her new bedroom. To her surprise, there was a small, dirty black cat sitting in the middle of the room, as if it had been awaiting her arrival. She knelt down, and the cat confidently walked over to her, straight into her awaiting hands, where Charlotte naturally began to pet her and stroke her. "I wonder who you belong to," she asked, as the cat had no collar or ID. She began to wonder how long the cat had been locked up in here when she noticed her window was wide open. Although she felt somewhat unsettled by this, she felt happy that she had already made a new friend. Monday soon came, and it was time for Charlotte to start in her new school. A little nervous, she caught the bus and arrived at the school and then made her way onto the school grounds. She felt like dozens of pairs of eyes were staring at her, which was confirmed when she sat down in her first class of the day, clearly standing out as someone new and awkward. No one welcomed her to the school. In fact, no one spoke to her at all. When it was time for lunch, she mustered up the courage to ask a group of girls if she could join them, only to be told no way because she looked weird and spoke funny. Devastated by this, she dumped her lunch in the bin and then ran to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall where she cried her eyes out. Around 10 minutes later, the bell rang for class. Still not feeling like she was quite ready to do it, she dried her eyes and sat for a while longer, contemplating whether or not she would go to class or just go home. It was then that she heard the door open and footsteps approach her stall. She sat in silence as she watched the shadow of the feet go past her, followed by no sound at all. She sat for what felt like an eternity when she heard the footsteps again. She watched them slowly walk past her again, and soon after, she heard the door to the bathroom open and then close. She exhaled, followed by a huge inhale and the realization that she had been holding her breath for who knows how long. She stepped out of the bathroom, and as she turned to the left, she found herself face to face with an old man who said to her, "What are you doing here?" She fired back, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" He replied quickly with, "I'm the janitor, missy. You shouldn't be here." "I'm going back to class now," she replied. As she walked away, his words echoed in her head. He was right. She shouldn't be here. She didn't go back to class. She left for home instead. And once she arrived, she went straight upstairs and was pleasantly surprised to see the cat on the windowsill, as if she was waiting for her. Her parents asked her at dinner how her first day went. She tried to hold back the tears, but she couldn't. She burst out crying and then ran outside into the backyard. "Let her go," the father said to the mother. "Starting a new school is tough. She'll be okay." The mother was shattered. She had some even worse news for her. She had spoken to Charlotte's best friend's mother today and was informed that her friend was missing. Charlotte sat out on the back porch, stared at the moon for a moment, and then put her face in her hands and cried. "What's wrong with me?" she thought. "Why don't I fit in?" She then felt something brush by her leg. It was the cat. She gave it a pat and then went to pick it up when, "Oh, there you are, Charlotte." A deep voice broke through the silence and sent a chill down her spine. She looked around to see where it had come from. Then she saw the janitor on the other side of the fence just staring at her. "I wondered where you had gotten to." "Did you follow me home?" Charlotte squawked back at the man. "How do you know my name?" "What?" he replied. "I'm not talking to you, miss. I'm talking to my cat." "Is your name also Charlotte?" he inquired. "Maybe," she said. "It's none of your business." "Look, I'm sorry, miss, and I didn't want to disturb you. It's just my cat, Charlotte. Ever since you moved in, she's been disappearing over there. I miss her is all, and I'm not sure when she last ate." Taken aback by this, she felt terrible. "No, I'm sorry. I had a really bad first day at school. I'm not in the greatest of moods. I'm sorry. I didn't know this was your cat." She picked up the cat and carried it over to the janitor at the fence. "Trouble making friends?" he asked. "You have no idea." "Oh, I might," he said. "Teenage girls can be total bitches. Don't think I get treated any better." "That's not fair," she said. "Well, no one ever said it should be. Look, I need to feed my cat, and I don't like her being out and about at night. Can you pass her here, please?" "No. Can I keep her?" "What?" "Don't be crazy," he quickly replied. "She's my cat. She's all I have. I don't know how she keeps getting out. She shouldn't be." Okay, Charlotte quipped back, and then handed the cat over the fence before going back inside and retreating to her bedroom for the night. Later that evening, her mother went upstairs to check on her before going to bed, and was slightly taken aback when she heard voices and noticed a strange odor emanating from her room. She cautiously peered through the crack in the door and could see that her daughter was talking to someone. She shifted her view and then realized that she was in deep conversation with a cat. A smelly, dirty little cat. From what she could hear, it appeared she was talking about her friend back in their hometown, the one that was abducted, and she was recalling stories of times they had spent together. Relieved and pleased that her daughter appeared to be happy again, she knew the time would soon come where she had to tell her about the disappearance of her friend. She couldn't do it now, though, so she walked back down the hall and took herself off to bed. Over the next few days, some terrible things began to happen at Charlotte's new school. Several students had fallen ill on Tuesday, and by Wednesday, they were dead. The coroner had put it down to poisoning and had traced it back to food that had been tainted at the school cafeteria. The school went into complete shutdown, and a major investigation was launched. Within the day, the detectives had managed to establish that a lethal dose of tetramine had been added to the school cake mix, which was then ingested by dozens of students who were now dead. It didn't take them long to find the source. In the janitor's closet was a canister of tetramine, now a banned substance, but formerly a very popular and incredibly effective rat poison. It was obviously also very lethal to humans. By that evening, the janitor was in custody. At dinner that night, no one spoke for several minutes until the silence was broken by the mother asking Charlotte if she had ever seen that man, the janitor, at school. She looked up from her food and said, "Oh yes, a few times. In fact, he's our next-door neighbor. I spoke to him over the fence one night." "What?" Her mother was clearly shocked. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing special. Just that the girls at school were bitches and that I could spend time with his cat." Her mother was lost for words and couldn't understand how she could be so calm after what had just happened at her new school. She was hugely concerned for her mental well-being, as it appeared Charlotte had been desensitized to the current situation by the amount of death she had experienced in her life over such a short period of time. Charlotte then spoke again. "Mum, I don't really feel like eating any more tonight. If it's all right with you, I'm going to go upstairs and talk with my friend." Yeah, of course, dear," the mother replied, not knowing what else to say. Her friend? Who? That dirty little cat? Charlotte left the table, and her mother hung her head and cried. Later that night, the mother was awoken by the sound of her daughter's laughter echoing down the hall. She rose from her bed and made her way down the hall to check on Charlotte. It was odd for her to still be up at this time of night. As she got closer, she could hear Charlotte more clearly, and then it became apparent that Charlotte was talking about the day's events to someone and laughing about it. Then, suddenly, the smell hit her again. "That damn cat," she muttered under her breath. And she was right. The cat was with Charlotte again, and she appeared deep in conversation, talking about how the girls at school had gotten what they deserved, and she was so happy that she could be with her one and only true friend. What the hell is she on about? The mother thought as she watched the cat walk away from Charlotte. The odd thing was, though, Charlotte's gaze hadn't shifted, and her conversation hadn't halted. She wasn't talking to the cat at all. Well, if she wasn't talking to the cat, who was she talking to? Her mother opened the door slowly and felt sick to her stomach when she saw the decomposing corpse of Charlotte's best friend propped up and rotting in the closet. "Oh my God," the mother screamed, struggling to take in what she was seeing and trying to ward off the realization that her daughter was a cold-blooded killer. "What have you done? What's wrong with you?" "Oh, Mother," Charlotte replied, "nothing's wrong. Daddy always does his best to make sure his little girl is happy."
Walk out the door, you see someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand. They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.